Good evening. Well, it was interesting that music was playing. Well done. The, do they hear the music? Oh, what a pity. Huh? The music that was playing while we were sitting quietly was music that was composed by the Wellness Center in America, typifying the characteristics as they perceive it of one of the archangels, Shamael. And all of these archangels, Michael in front, Raphael, Uriel, Gabriel, Shamael, all have different aspects, and they all end in El, Elohim, the root of their belief is Elohim, the Jewish name for the one. So Diva, the word Diva and Mahadeva have, I'm talking now instead of meditating for the simple reason that I have a regimen for eye treatments that is at 8 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock. So at 8 o'clock I just have to leave the room for a few minutes and then come back for meditation. So I thought better to talk first, and then when you're meditating, I can do what I need to do. So Diva means different things to different people. In Sanskrit, it is a divine entity, being, or energy, and they are taken to be the architects of life. The architects, especially those Devas related to the plant kingdom. They are known as the architects of life. And when a human stands in front of something that is inconceivably mysterious, magical, and can't understand, this is the indication of the presence of a diva, an architect of life, and a sustainer of life. And they are taken as divine beings, entities, or energies, depending upon what part of the world they are being referred to as. And I'm sure many of you have heard of Findhorn in Scotland. And Findhorn in Scotland is a place notorious for their worship and ceremonies and contact with Divas, the Diva kingdoms. And by communicating with the Divas and working with them and not against them, what they are able to produce and manufacture in that environment where there is a mutual recognition of the interdependence of the human, which can be seen, and the architects of life that can't be seen. They are said to have peculiar colors, which are reflected in what they are maintaining, what flower, what shrub is carrying the color of that particular diva or energy. And in the language of Advaita or religion or spirituality, a diva is regarded as a spiritual, sublime being and a god. All architects of and coordinating the affairs of manifestation. And as you know, Maha means great. So a diva that is endowed with particular attributes of power and greatness would be a Maha diva, a major god, a major spiritual being. And all of those who have been to India or been to Tiruvannamalai, they will know how often the chant Shiva Shiva Mahadeva is on the lips of most of the devotees. Shiva Shiva Mahadeva, the great God, indicating that there is a hierarchy of lesser gods and a god or the god. So that would be from a Vedic point of view, a South Indian point of view, and when it comes to I'll put it like that. When they are taken by rishis and seers and life as the architects of life, do they have a break? Can they take a nap? I mean, that's foreign to a divine energy. A nap. It's like having a shot of whiskey, you know. It's just foreign. It's just an architect, not just, these are architects of all of these miracles that we see. So when Albert Einstein says you can live your life as though everything is a miracle, or you can live your life as though nothing is a miracle, you can lead your life as though I'm gaining an appreciation and an apprehension of that force which lies behind manifestation, because they are the architects of life that stand behind the form to keep it there, to sustain it. So what are these divas and what is the relationship between their so-called way or life and that of a manifested part of creation, whether it's plants or humans? And how this is perceived in Buddhism and in Advaita. It's interesting to see that when that great devotee of the Buddha took the message of Buddhism or non-duality to India, it was Bodhidharma taking the message of the Indian philosophy of the Buddha to India. It was taken readily on board because it resonated with the very certain basics of the Chinese culture. And when it was blended with the same values in China, then it became known as Zen Buddhism. So coming back to and founded on the Mahadeva, which was, in this case, the Buddha. And if I'm a Buddhist, I will be very familiar with what is referred to by them as the Bodhisattva vow. Bodhisattva being one of those enlightened beings that was to form an incredible tapestry between the Indian philosophy and of Advaita and the Buddhist philosophy, with a lot of cross-pollination between Advaita and Buddhism. Buddhism, as those who have been in that in any way, will be aware of two broad divisions, one being Hinayana Buddhism and the other one Mahayana Buddhism. Yana means vehicle by which something is conveyed or transmitted. Maha means great. So Mahayana Buddhism is the great vehicle of liberation, and Hinayana is the lesser vehicle. The difference in Hinayana Buddhism, the emphasis and the thrust is on personal salvation. It's about me, and my perception is that the Buddha was an ordinary mortal who attained enlightenment. Hinayana Buddhism saw the Buddha as an ordinary human being who attained enlightenment through a process of self-empowerment or self-observation or self-realization, but always a singular attempt by an individual. And hence maybe the name Hinayana Buddhism, it's a smaller vehicle. The Mahayana Buddhism is the one that very closely resembles the essence of Advaita. And it started in South India, surprise, surprise. South India is just the most amazing part of this planet. And in Mahayana Buddhism, it's not the emphasis on the individual, but on the whole. That's why it's a great vehicle. The whole being equivalent to the self in Vedic terminology. And those who followed and wanted to propagate Mahayana Buddhism, when they were on fire, so to speak, they took a vow, not of poverty, chastity, and obedience, but a vow that they would not give up this incarnation or this dharma of theirs until everyone was free. Much like in a sinking ship, when the captain will say, children and passengers first. And then if it's a really old-fashioned captain, then all of the crew. And if there is space and a place and a time for the captain, then he will accept. So that would be the main difference between Mahayana and Hinayana, with Mahayana being very closely allied to our way. the great vehicle. And when one felt or one had the Dharma of really fulfilling the role of bringing everyone to fulfillment before I pass through the pearly gates, then I can go so far as to take what is referred to as the Bodhisattva vow, which is a vow that is made that they promise never to attempt to scale the pearly heights or the pearly gates until every last being has attained salvation, which is quite awesome when you think of it. How rare can that be for a soul to take that kind of vow if it's not driven by incredible love, detachment, wisdom? We can run out of human words, but how great must that be for that to arise? So the question would then, or could then be, do they ever sleep or catnap? Do they have an 8 to 5 job? I think that question itself is quite stupid. There is no time in that universe, but there are architects of life, which keep humans mesmerized by their skills. And we always wonder how did that rose take that color and that shape when it's planted in a pot with a marigold? It took a different color, a different shade. It was under the guidance of individually different devas. In this case, plant devas, as opposed to spiritual devas that are referred to in the spiritual part of Buddhism and Advaita. So I remember Appa once saying, and it can be seen in so many different ways, you are never alone. Where can you go? All around you are these architects of life. They have no problem because they have no mind. And they act as the source of food, inspirational, spiritual food. And something can be so mind-stoppingly beautiful, and it just throws us into mindfulness. And that is the work of these light engineers or these life architects. And in Fontaine, by a two-way interaction between humanoids and Divas and Mahdevas. I'm sure you've all at some point scrolled to see the miracles that happen at Fontaine, because they're working in accord with the Devic realm and not against it or ignoring it. They are always there. They are always perfect. It's man and his mind that's got the problem. So at night, are the angels watching over you? Sorry, Divas. Wink, wink means the same thing. So whether you call them angels and archangels or Divas and Mahdevas, the man in the street will poo-poo. Oh, you're talking about that angel stuff again. Yeah, that's a form conscious. Hard nut to crack. So even if there's some cynicism rising here in this moment, Why do we sing Shiva Shiva, Mahadeva, the great God? And where does that inspiration come from when I stand in front of something like that tree or that flower or that forest? We know what effect the Devas have on us, but we've never put it down to anything other than it's a mystery. We keep saying it's a mystery. Yes, it is. And what's behind that are these architects of life, which we don't ever see or hear them described as such. Who is it? What is it that draws from the same soil and feeds different Devas manifestations differently? It's got nothing to do with man and his head and his nutrients theory and his Newtonian way of looking at things. They offer an opportunity to rise above form consciousness if we can just allow them the magic to be there. And we've heard it said so many times during the years, is that a pot? Is that a tree? And the form conscious being that I am will say, well, of course it is. What else? And that's end of story. That's a tree. There's no magic, there's no mystery, there's nothing. And that leads to a deadness of spirit. When Christ said the living dead, he was referring to those who cannot go there. They cannot sense that mystery that blew Albert Einstein away. What is that? Well, Divas, Mahdevas, or in English words, angels and archangels. Exactly the same meaning. All in service to the one intelligence, the Mahadeva. And it was for many years a part of my, I won't say daily, but almost daily, slips. Routine would be to open the sliding gates or the sliding door at the back and just look at all of those plants and the mountain and just say thank you, thank you, thank you to all of the Divas and Mahadevas that were maintaining, keeping, and being it. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say about anything, or if there's anything that has caught your attention and holding it? What did open a little gap in the door, a door of form consciousness that prevents us from sensing this miracle, this form consciousness if on a particular day, preferably a Sunday when you're not pressured for time, to once again be with an aspect of manifestation. And it doesn't matter what it is. There will be a diva behind it, a spirit. an energy. They're divine energies, the architects of life and to sustain life. And our Pa would often say, put your hands on the tree. It's not a tree. Are you all, maybe not one or two of you, but you're all familiar with that breakthrough from form consciousness to essence consciousness that is vital in order to feel at home on this plane. That breakthrough from form consciousness to what lies behind form was what Appa did with two or three of us that were fairly form conscious. In my two previous professions, I had no choice but to be form conscious. He came into the meditation hall with 3 pieces of folded A4 paper. You know the story, not all of you. And he gave one to each of us 3 before the meditation started. And he said, when meditation starts, I want you just to feel into that piece of paper in your hands, folded several times. Just feel into it. In other words, it's not a piece of paper. But he didn't say that. He just said, feel into it. And as a pilot and as an engineer, I thought, what is this? Feel what's going to come from this piece of paper. It's made by Mondi. You know, it's made from trees. What's going to come to me? You know, I'm a spiritual being. It didn't take words, but that was the feeling behind it. It was like confusion. What? But because he was my guru, I put this thing between my hands after the talk, and when meditation started, and the internal monologue went something like this. Okay, he said, I must do this. I know, quote unquote, it's just a piece of recycled timber from the Mondi mill. What is going to come from this? Might be sweaty hands or a bit of ink. What possibly can come from this? Form consciousness. But because he'd asked, I tried. And after 10 minutes of meditation or 15 minutes, it was coincidence. We both opened our eyes at the same time. And he said, so how's it going? I said, nothing's coming. So he said, okay, I would like you to close your eyes and just bring your awareness to what is in your hands. What is that in your hands? Of course, I knew it was a piece of paper. So I thought, oh, okay, we'll go, give it another go. Something might happen. Sat again for 15 minutes. And then we opened our eyes at the same time. It was also a mystery. So I said, so? So I said, no, nothing. I was getting a bit exasperated. He said, okay, Patrick, I'll tell you what we do. You just put that piece of paper in your hands and you just close your eyes and be with the feeling that comes to you. Not that you feel, but that comes to you from that paper. And then I got very agitated, almost angry, and I said, okay. And I tried it one more time, and then when our eyes met, he said, so what happened? I said, nothing. Raised my voice. You know, like it's an idiot question. What's supposed to come to me? It's embarrassing to talk like this, but this actually was like this. He saw I was angry. He just smiled very lovingly. Okay, so I tell you what, we just put the paper in our hands and we just go into meditation and just feel what comes. And then I screamed. I said, I can't do this. And he said, okay, close your eyes, go to your hands and feel what comes to that piece of paper or from that piece of paper. You've let out all the steam. You can now just let it all go now. And because I could let it go, something could happen. But I didn't know that at the time. So I just, okay, I'm not trying anymore. And when you stop trying, it can happen. Because when you're trying, mind is in the way. So when I'd given it up as hopeless, that's when it could happen. Because the human was out of the way. And the energy from that paper was quite significant. So when our eyes met the next time, I think he just raised his arms, in other words, and anything come to you? I said, yes. He said, what? He said that I said the energy of a large oak tree. He said, open the piece of paper, and there was a large oak tree. It wasn't a piece of paper from the Mondi mill. This is how form conscious we have become on this planet. We can't feel and be with these Devic energies or the architects of life, without which we wouldn't survive. So it is a part of a natural worship for most who are aware of this, to pay homage, to thank, to try and give back in any way they feel capable of for this incredible work they do, all unseen. They are no different other than name to the word angels and archangels. The same function, but just different names from different sides of the world. Also there, to be there, to inspire, to guide, and it's a point that shouldn't be taken too lightly. If I'm form conscious, totally form conscious, this whole talk will be meaningless to me. If there's something that starts to feel like a little stirring, then it might be that it's more the hearing of the heart than the hearing of the mind that's being touched. Because head relates to form, heart relates to feeling, metaphysical heart, like the blood pumping mechanism. So in that transition from form consciousness to essence consciousness is the transformation from looking to seeing. What is that seeing that I'm seeing? I'm actually becoming conscious of these amazing, and you can't put a word to it, you don't know what it is, but you just feel a magic. Like you can walk into a forest garden, or you can walk on the beach and you can feel what you don't feel in the office. There are divas who are the caretakers of marigolds, for example, those for trees, those for birds, those for flowers, those for bees, those for the ocean, etc., etc. All having one thing in common, and that is one life through all. Mahayana Buddhism, the great vehicle, where everyone is seen as not separate from. And what is quite interesting that in Buddhism and Hinduism, they draw their ancient inspiration from very similar sources, because the overlap between the two is quite remarkable. In both, there is a veneration of Devas and Mahdevas, as there is a veneration for angels and archangels in a different language. But they are seen as guides. They are seen as sources of inspiration, sources that have a singular purpose of being architects of life. They don't know anything else, as mind knows things, quote unquote. So when Appa said you are never alone, I took it to mean one thing at the time, but in hindsight I see it in a very different way. If there is only one intelligence behind all devas, behind all of nature, behind humans, how can you ever be alone? There is just the one. We can only sense aloneness when the sense of boundaries returns. And that is when mind returns with its Newtonian thinking. Oh, this is a piece of Mondi paper. That's Newtonian thinking. But that's what we've been educated to have as a way of life. It's quite shocking, actually. And what did help marginally, I would think marginally in some quarters, maybe quite significantly in other quarters of the human spirit, was the advent of Kirlian photography, which could photograph what the eyes couldn't see, because the cameras and the film were on very higher frequencies than what the eyes could see. But with Kirlian photography and seeing what the eyes couldn't see, it was astounding for them, the Kirlians in particular, to see that what we have taken to be inert or dead matter also has an aura. And that's what Kirlian photography became famous for. They could see around every flower, every rock, the auric imprint of the Deva, the Diva. And it silenced many people who took life as black and white in form. Seeing beyond the form to the essence is what I would say could be considered as a role of the Divas, Mahdevas, angels, archangels, to keep us sane spiritually and not lose the plot mentally. So it's just another way of seeing angels and archangels in a different light, other than what the waking dream has told us about them. And that miracle is available to all of us all the time. We can stand in front of a flower or a tree and say, "You're a magnolia," and then it's a pity. If you could keep your mind out of the way and just feel what comes to you from that flower. Like Appa was saying, feel what comes to you. Now the mind can't do that. So when you feel what comes to you, you've already negated the problem. You've set aside the problem. If you're thinking what comes to you, you've reinforced the problem. Hence the feeling. Because the feeling can be far more sensitive to devic energy than the thinking mind. So it's not seeing as believing. It's knowing and existing as such. It's not about believing. It's not about seeing the form. It's like walking into a place which your mind is telling you haven't been there before, but maybe through déjà vu or something, there's another part of you that doesn't take into account the body, the place, the time, the Newtonian coordinates, but just senses, it feels. And what is it feeling? It's an energy. Whose energy? Maybe the diva of that house. Maybe the elements that constitute the house. Those are not bricks. It's not a door. That's what form consciousness and education has trained us, unfortunately. And that's why Bhagavan called it the waking dream. It's just not true. Everything you invest in is just not true, with a capital T. It's true with a relative truth, small t, but it's not the truth. And we can spend the whole life mantling and dismantling relative truth, or the form of something. But if feelings aren't taking over from thoughts, I don't know how we overcome this. So it's one good argument for feeling, and an antidote to thinking, if I really cognite on the essence of things that we can't see. The physical senses will not relate to that. The spiritual senses, or the consciousness that I am, can feel. And I was very fortunate enough to have such concrete proof, all happening within 1 hour. It was a breakthrough for me. A very intense 1 hour struggle that Appa went through to break this form consciousness. So the Devas and the Mahdevas are free of that. They're always there to inspire, to guide, to nurture, to whatever, but only if we ask. I don't know if they would intervene unasked. It's almost like violation of personal rights. It's almost ahimsa, a violation of ahimsa. And many healers and teachers would say the same thing with different words. Christ said it in his words, knock and the door will be opened. He didn't say stand there, you know. He said knock. In other words, ask and you shall receive. Show me who you are. Reveal yourself to me. You are not a pot. And you can talk to them. And it doesn't matter what your fellow friends, associates think of you talking to this tree. That's their problem. It's not done in their company. But can they hear you? I wonder. Maybe not as the human uses the word hearing. Are they intimately in touch with you? Maybe that might be the case. But hearing doesn't put you intimately in touch with anything. It just causes confusion, doubt, misunderstanding, and bending. This is the wonders of the adult mind. And why Christ said it's so important to turn and become like little children again and not be clever with adult thinking and scheming. So these angels and archangels, they are stationed, in a sense, about us. Initially taken to be separate from us, but maybe upon awakening from the stream, we find they are aspects of us, of the self, taken to be separate at the time. Let's take a look at the one obstacle that many people have, and that's the love for God, or the love for Jesus. Now, if you talk like this to some people, their toes will curl. You're a Jesus freak. There's no God. Your toes will curl. It's okay. Let them curl. Let them curl. Because one day I might feel that there are no boundaries anywhere. And that can only happen when the mind is free of all thoughts and movements. In other words, it's out of the way. And then one sees the mystery that everything is not separate from you. And how patient were these guides in the forms of Devas, Mahdevas, angels and archangels that work at a different level of consciousness to what we have in the waking dream. If anyone would like to say anything, ask anything. What was that came into my field of awareness when I was holding a formal piece of paper? It had nothing to do with the formal piece of paper. All that remained was a mystery, like the mystery of every flower, every beetle, every fly. But the engineers of life, the Divas, are behind it as an aspect of the one that I am. But I can't yet run up to that incredible mystery. And they can become more and more real. And when you first mention it, you get strange looks. Like, where is Michael? And why do they all end in L? Michael, Samuel, Raphael. It's again the heritage of that Jewish tradition of Elohim, agents of the One. And they're always at our beck and call, but not if we don't ask. It's like if you don't ask me for help and I just come along, push you aside and start helping you, that's violence. So in the Indian tradition, even if you feel help is needed, but it's not asked for, it's the same what Christ said. Knock, in other words, ask. And if you ask, then you're free to help. But if you're not asked, you can fold that sentence in your own way. And it's interesting that in most circles in which the reality of these celestial divine beings are part and parcel of their philosophy, they have some fairly similar ways of perceiving this hierarchy. If you ask them at which compass points where do you find Michael, most will say to your right. If they ask for Raphael, it will be in front of you. If you ask for Uriel, it will be on your left. If you ask for Gabriel, it will be behind you. If you implore Shamuel, goddess of love, it will be above you. All maintaining the field of life and energy that you are and not separate from. And Fontaine is where that becomes a reality, and you can see it reflected in their life, what produce they produce when there's a working together with these divas, and it's very convincing. It was quite an eye-opener. And how they interpret the mission of Yeshua or Christ far more holistically and all-embracingly, as not separate from us. So at about this time, I was, for those who thought there was meditation first, I apologize for that. But I am on a schedule of medications for this operation I had, and I have to have certain things at 4-hour intervals, 8 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock. So in a few minutes, I'm going to leave for 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'll come back and then join you with meditation. But it's for that reason that I thought it would be more appropriate to talk first tonight and then sit later. So we've got 5 minutes left if anybody would like to say something, ask something. No, it's not a topic that comes up. I say this is not a topic that comes up normally in the life of the human, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's no questions. because this waking dream is governed by seeing is believing. If it's not in a form, it's not true. You can't see essence, so essence can't be true. Seeing is believing. In other words, what do you see? You can only see the potness. You can't see the clay. And we bow down to potness. But strangely enough, in the teachings of the Buddha, there is a place for ritual worship. There is a place for worshipping photographs, statues, because it realizes that in the beginning, mind is mind, is mind, is mind, and it needs a form to anchor itself into one-pointedness. And when it's anchored in one-pointedness, it's easier to go deeper into stillness than when the mind is agitated and distracted. So I've said many times before, if I look at somebody sitting in front of a photograph or an idol, I will call them, in my ignorance, an idolater. They're venerating form. All because that's all I know. I respond to form, and therefore I assume that he is responding to form. But maybe that form is just a link or a bridge to take him into essence and still his mind. So can that point of focus, which it always will be a point photograph of veneration, the equivalent to my attitude towards the Diva or Mahdeva, teacher or major teacher. And that one-pointedness can still me. And when it stills me, I start losing my grip on this form consciousness that only sees pots, tables, and chairs. And I'm in a bit of an in-between land, a bit of a cloud of unknowingness that might seem to touch me, and I might even not like it, but I can't see you not liking it. But then when the essence is intuited or felt or perceived, whatever the word is, it's essence touching essence. It's Devas touching this Diva, divine being. For there is in essence no difference. In form there's enormous difference. And to praise the angels and archangels, for me, was equally as important as honoring the plant Divas, the architects of life. They are doing what surprises us all, and what confused Albert Einstein when he said, you can live your life as though everything is a miracle, or you can live it as though nothing is a miracle. One is when I'm using my mind and I'm relating to form. The other one is when I've dropped all forms, drop the paper, Monty paper, and I'm feeling into what comes to me. And then I'm living in a different world, a world maybe that I'm meant to live in, at least with one leg, even if not with both legs in the beginning. All right, I am going to say goodbye for 5 minutes, and maybe it's a good place to be quiet.